"For Christmas, I want you gone," my dad said, like I was some guest who'd overstayed. I'd paid their rent when eviction notices came, filled their fridge when it was empty, kept the heat on while they slept under my roof. But that night, my chair, at the table, was already gone. I didn't beg. I didn't fight. I just slid my key across the counter and walked into the cold. 3 days later, that same house went dark because without me, they couldn't keep the lights on. Stay with me, because what happened next, no one at that table ever saw coming. And if you've ever been pushed out by the very people you helped, you might know exactly how this feels. The house smelled like cinnamon and ham, the kind of smell that's supposed to wrap around you like a blanket on Christmas night. Twinkling lights reflected off the polished dining table, dancing across glasses of cheap wine. Plates clinked softly as forks moved in a rhythm older than the family itself. And then my father set his fork down. It wasn't loud, but the sound still cut through the air like glass shattering. His eyes locked on mine, cold and deliberate. He leaned back in his chair, lips curling into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Grace," he said, voice smooth and venomous this Christmas. "The only gift I want is for you to get out of this house." For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. The words were too sharp, too absurd, too cruel to have just been spoken in the middle of Christmas dinner. My mom let out this awkward, brittle laugh, the kind you use to cover something ugly. "Robert," she murmured, as if maybe it was a joke. But he didn't laugh. His gaze stayed locked on mine, unwavering. He meant every syllable. Mia, my little sister, froze mid-bite. She's 16, all wide eyes and unshaped bravery. "She's not. Stay out of it." My father snapped the warmth of the holiday, bleeding out of the room in an instant. I set my fork down slowly, my heartbeat too loud in my ears. I could feel every muscle in my body tense, like my skin itself was bracing for impact. It was almost funny. Every string of lights in this house, every flicker of heat from the furnace, every bite of food on this table, I'd paid for it. The lights, the heat, the Wi-Fi mom streamed her shows on while Dad napped through the afternoons. Without me, this house wouldn't even have running water. And now, on Christmas night, I was the gift to be thrown away. I didn't speak. Not because I didn't have words, but because if I opened my mouth, I wasn't sure if I'd scream or break. I could taste the salt of my own restraint. Dad leaned back further, looking almost relaxed, like finally saying it, finally getting rid of me was some kind of personal victory. "I've been thinking about this for a long time," he said. "You've overstayed your welcome." My mom shifted in her seat, eyes on her plate. No protest. No, don't talk to her that way. Nothing. Just silence. Like maybe she agreed. Mia's fork clinked against her plate as she set it down. "She's not a burden," she said softly, almost like a prayer. Dad's glare snapped to her, and she shrank back, staring at her hands. I inhaled slowly, holding the breath like it might keep me from exploding. Then I said the only word I could manage without shaking. "All right." That one word, calm, flat, seemed to please him. He smirked, picked his fork back up, and cut into his slice of ham like nothing had happened. My mom started eating again, 2 small mechanical bites. No one looked at me. I stood, picked up my plate, and carried it to the sink. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else, someone heavier, someone who'd been walking in the snow for days. I didn't trust myself to look at Mia, but when I did, she was sitting perfectly still, her hands in her lap, eyes darting between me and Dad, like she was waiting for something to explode. I gave her the smallest nod I could manage, my way of saying I'm okay even though I wasn't. I didn't stay to finish dinner. I didn't touch dessert. I walked straight to my room and shut the door. The muffled sounds of cutlery and murmured conversation fading behind me. The darkness in my room felt heavier than usual, like it had been waiting for me. My hands were shaking as I reached for my suitcase. There was no hesitation, no second guessing. If they wanted me gone, fine. But they weren't ready for what gone really meant. They would lose the bills I paid, the stability I provided, the quiet ways I'd kept this place alive for years, and I wasn't going to give them a warning. Downstairs, voices were low but sharp. Mom's soft and unsure, Dad's clipped and certain. The heat kicked on a hum that suddenly felt like my hum, because I'd paid for it, and soon it would be gone. I folded clothes in silence, each one a reminder that my presence here had been reduced to a burden, a problem to be removed like dust from a shelf. This wasn't the first time my father had cut me with his words, but tonight was different. Tonight he'd done it in front of everyone on a night meant for love and peace. And if he thought I would just disappear quietly into the cold, he didn't know me at all. I woke before the sun, long before anyone else. The house was quiet, but not the kind of peaceful quiet you want to savor. This was the kind of stillness that came before a storm, heavy, unnatural. The air was cold enough to make my breath visible in the dim light. Funny, in just a few days it would be even colder. I moved silently, my footsteps slow and deliberate on the creaking floorboards. I didn't want another scene, not because I was afraid of one, but because I wanted my exit to be mine, not his. My suitcase was heavier now. I'd packed the essentials, clothes, toiletries, my laptop, but left behind the things I could live without. A few boxes stacked neatly in the corner, the ones I'd always told myself I'd come back for someday. That someday was gone now. I hauled the first suitcase down the stairs. The wood groaned under my weight, the sound echoing in the sleeping house. I didn't look around. I didn't want to see the living room where I'd strung the lights, the kitchen where I'd cooked meals they never thanked me for. Outside, the air bit at my cheeks. I loaded my car in silence, my fingers stiff from the cold. The trunk shut with a final satisfying thud. Before I got in, I pulled out my phone. The glow of the screen lit my face as I opened my banking app. I scrolled through the list of auto-pay accounts, electric, internet, water, gas, Netflix. All of them in my name. All of them feeding this house. One by one, I canceled them. With each confirmation, I felt lighter. Electricity canceled. Internet canceled. Gas canceled. 3 weeks, maybe less, before the warmth and light I'd been paying for vanished. Before the Wi-Fi Mom used for her nightly dramas froze mid-scene. Before Dad realized that yelling wouldn't heat the house. I didn't leave a note. No explanation. Let them figure it out when the lights went out and the water turned cold. Seattle was 3 hours north. Chloe lived in a cramped one-bedroom with a couch that sagged in the middle, but when I'd called her last night, she hadn't hesitated. "You can stay here as long as you need," she'd said, and she meant it. That alone made her place warmer than this house had been in years. The drive was quiet. The road stretched ahead like a ribbon of silver under the pale winter sky. My mind replayed last night over and over, his voice sharp as glass. "The only gift I want is for you to get out." By the time I pulled into Chloe's parking lot, the bitterness had settled into something harder. Not rage, not sadness. Something colder. Chloe's smile when she opened the door was real, unforced. Max, her dog, bounded over, tail wagging like I was the best thing that had happened all day. Her roommate barely looked up from the couch, just grunted and asked if I was staying forever. Maybe I was. For the first time in years, no one here looked at me like I owed them something. 3 days later, my phone started buzzing. 7 missed calls from Mom, 2 from Dad, shocking considering he almost never called unless he wanted something. I ignored them all. Then Mia's name lit up my screen. "They're freaking out. The power's been cut off." I couldn't help it, a grin spread across my face. They really thought the bills would just pay themselves. Another message, Dad's losing it. He says, "You did something to the house." I could picture it perfectly. Dad stomping around in the dark, his voice bouncing off cold walls, Mom crying over the Wi-Fi being gone. An hour later, Mom called again. This time I answered. "Grace," she said, voice shaky, "we don't know what happened." "The power's out, the internet's down the water, I didn't pay," I said flatly. Silence. "Then you paid for these?" I almost laughed. "Who else did you think was paying for them?" She hesitated. "Your father said," and stopped herself. I already knew what he'd said, that everything would be fine without me, that the house would somehow run itself like magic. "Not my problem anymore," I said and hung up. I thought that would be the end of it. They'd scramble, maybe find work, sell something, or maybe they'd just sit in the dark and blame me. But I was wrong. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. It started with a ping. I was halfway through Chloe's stale cereal, scrolling mindlessly, when my phone buzzed with a bank alert. Suspicious login attempt detected. My stomach knotted. I clicked into my account. Nothing had been taken yet, but the activity log made my skin crawl. Failed. Password resets minutes apart, one after another. I didn't need a detective to tell me who it was. Before I could even think, my phone lit up again. Mia. I answered on the first ring. "Grace," she whispered. Her voice was tight, shaky, like she was trying not to be heard. "I was just about to call you. Dad's been on the computer all morning, slamming the keys like he's trying to break them. He keeps yelling about money." "Is he looking for my old passwords?" A pause. Then, "Yeah. Remember that little spiral notebook Mom kept by the desk? He's going through it." Of course. That battered thing had every password I'd made as a teenager, back before I'd learned not to reuse them. "He's wasting his time," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. Mia's voice dropped even lower. "He's saying you ruined us, that you did this on purpose." And she trailed off. "And what I think he's going to do something stupid." The words made the back of my neck prickle. What does that mean? He's pacing, slamming doors. Mom's crying, trying to calm him down, but he's not listening. He keeps saying, "She's not going to get away with this." I closed my eyes. "Lock your door. If he tries anything crazy, call me right away. Promise me, Mia. I promise." The second we hung up, I went to work, changing every password from bank accounts to email to streaming services. I called my bank, told them someone was trying to break in. They locked my account so tight even I had trouble getting in for a few hours. By the time I logged back in, my chest had stopped burning, but the unease stayed. Cutting them off had been one thing, but this was personal. 3 nights later, Chloe and I were halfway through some trashy reality show when someone banged on the apartment door so hard the picture frames rattled. She muted the TV instantly. "Are you expecting someone?" "No," but I already knew. The second bang was louder. Then a voice, deep and furious, "Grace," opened the door. Chloe's eyes went wide. "Is that your dad?" I got up slowly, every muscle taut. One glance through the peephole, and there he was, Robert, fists clenched, breathing like a bull about to charge. "Grace," he barked, "you think you can just walk away from this?" I stepped back from the door, my pulse thudding in my temples. "Should I call the cops?" Chloe asked. "Yes," I said without hesitation. My voice came out colder than I expected. She was already dialing when his fist slammed into the door again. "You owe us. You don't get to run off and leave us to starve." Chloe gave the dispatcher our address. 2 minutes later, faint sirens cut through his shouting. The pounding stopped. I heard footsteps shifting in the hallway, then a calm knock. "Police. Open up." Chloe cracked the door, letting 2 officers in. They moved past us, out into the hallway. "Sir, step back," one of them ordered. Robert turned, face flushed, chest heaving. "She's my daughter. She thinks she can ruin us." "Sir, you need to leave the property," the officer said, firm but even. Robert's eyes slid over their shoulders, locking onto mine. Pure hatred. You did this." I didn't flinch. The officers cuffed him right there in the hallway. His voice echoed off the walls as they led him away. "You'll regret this, Grace." When the door shut, the silence was heavy. Chloe looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "Holy crap," she breathed. That was intense. I let out a slow breath, the air feeling thicker than it should. "It's not over," I said quietly. And I was right. It didn't even take a week before the next hit came. Mia's text lit up my phone while I was making coffee in Chloe's cramped kitchen. "Mom's selling your stuff." I froze mug halfway to the counter. "What stuff?" I typed back. Her reply came fast. "Your laptop, your old camera, even your car." I actually laughed at first. "My car's here," I wrote, then paused. The space in Chloe's lot where I'd parked 2 days ago, empty. 15 minutes later, I was back on the highway to Portland, my hands gripping the steering wheel hard enough to ache. When I pulled into my parents' driveway, my stomach dropped. My car was there, driver's seat pushed back, glove compartment hanging open, gas tank nearly empty. Before I could step out, the front door swung open. Susan stood there, arms crossed like she'd been rehearsing. "You called the cops on your father," she snapped. "You stole my car," I shot back. She scoffed. "It was just sitting there. You weren't using it." "It's my car, Mom. How did you even get it?" Her eyes flickered just enough for me to know she'd used the spare key I'd stupidly left behind. "Give me the key," I said, my voice low. She didn't move. "If you don't, I'll call the police again." Her jaw tightened. Without a word, she turned, disappeared inside. A minute later, she came back, tossing the key at my chest. It bounced off, landing in the grass. "Happy now?" she hissed. "No," I said flatly, stepping past her into the house. Mia was in the hallway, pale. "She took your laptop," she whispered. "Pawned it." I closed my eyes, counted to 3. When I opened them, my phone was already in my hand. Susan's head snapped toward me. "Don't you dare." "Yes, I'd like to report stolen property," I told the dispatcher, never breaking eye contact with her. The color drained from her face. "You can't do this to me. I'm your mother." "You already did it to yourself," I said. When the officers arrived, I handed them Mia's statement, my proof of purchase, and told them exactly which pawn shop to check. They led Susan outside in handcuffs, while neighbors peeked from behind curtains. She was crying, screaming about being just a struggling mom. I stood in the doorway, silent, as the patrol car pulled away. Mia came to stand beside me. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "This is really happening, isn't it?" I said quietly. "It is." But the look in her eyes told me she knew, and I knew it still wasn't over. It was less than 24 hours before my phone buzzed again. An unfamiliar number. Just 4 words. "You're going to regret this." I didn't need a signature to know who it was. Robert was out. Someone, maybe one of his old drinking buddies, had bailed him. I called Mia immediately. "He's out," she said without preamble. Her voice was tight. "Mom's losing it, crying 1 minute, screaming the next. And Dad, what about him? He said he's coming for you." I didn't waste time. "Stay inside. Lock your door. Call me if anything happens." Then I drove straight back to the house. 2 patrol cars were already there, the same officers from yesterday, finishing paperwork on Susan's arrest. I walked up to them. "Can I go in and get the rest of my things?" One nodded. "As long as your sister's okay with it." Mia was already at the stairs. "Let's make it quick." We moved fast, clothes, books, random things I'd left behind, thinking I'd come back for them someday. Not anymore. I was carrying the last box to my car when headlights cut across the driveway. A dark sedan rolled in slow, then stopped hard. Robert got out. He slammed the door so hard the sound cracked through the cold air. He started toward me with that same bull-like fury I'd seen in Chloe's hallway. I set the box down and stepped forward, my voice carrying, You come near me and I'll file for a restraining order. Lifetime." His hands curled into fists. "You think you're better than us?" I smiled, not because it was funny, but because I saw the flicker of rage in his eyes. "I know I am." For a moment I thought he'd swing at me right there in front of the cops, but one of the officers stepped forward. "Sir, you need to leave the premises." Robert's jaw flexed, but he turned back toward his car, muttering curses. Tires squealed as he tore down the street. I loaded the box into my trunk. Mia stood on the porch, arms wrapped around herself. "I don't want to stay here," she said quietly. I know I told her. 2 more years. You can do it. Her eyes were glassy, but she nodded. That night I thought it was over. It wasn't. The next morning a knock came at Chloe's door. Not Robert. 2 uniformed officers, different this time. One held a thick envelope. Grace Collins, I signed for it, shut the door and tore it open. A lawsuit. Filed by Robert and Susan. Claims of failure to provide familial support and financial abandonment. For a moment I almost laughed. It was so absurd I could picture Robert grinning as he signed the paperwork, thinking this was the move that would finally hurt me. I didn't call a lawyer right away. I called Mia. "They're trying to sue me," I said. There was a pause, then a click of understanding in her voice. "You're going to need the USB." 2 days later, I walked into my attorney's office and slid the drive across his desk. "Everything you need to bury them is on there." He plugged it in. Dozens of files opened photos of receipts, bank statements, texts from Mom and Dad, admitting they relied on me to pay every bill for years. Videos of Robert drunkenly ranting about letting Grace handle the money because she owes us. It took less than a month for the case to be dismissed. Their big move had just handed me a permanent legal record of their dependence and their abuse. And this time, there was no appeal. Freedom didn't roar. It arrived like a refrigerator hum in a small apartment at 2 a.m. Steady and ordinary, and impossible to unhear once you notice it. I signed the lease on a studio 10 minutes from Chloe's place in Seattle. 1 room, a window that looked into an alley, a heater that clicked awake like it was making up its mind. It wasn't much. It was mine. No voices through thin walls, no footsteps measuring my usefulness, no one standing over me with a hand out. I slept with my phone on airplane mode and woke up to silence that didn't feel like punishment. I changed everything: passwords, forwarding address, 2-factor codes that dinged only on my new number. I blocked both of them, and anyone connected enough to carry messages they were too cowardly to send themselves. The first week I kept checking the peephole like a reflex. After the second week I stopped. Mia called from her friend's phone when it was safe. Sometimes she talked about homework or the track meet. Sometimes she just breathed. "They're acting like nothing happened," she said once, disbelief and exhaustion braided together. "Dad's telling people he let you go because you were disrespectful. Mom says you stormed out after a little disagreement at dinner. I let them keep their fairy tale. If it helped them swallow the dark, let them pretend they weren't the ones who shut off the lights." Winter melted into a gray early spring. I took a second shift that wasn't glamorous, and a freelance thing that was numbers I could tame, budgets that balanced columns, that made sense because I made them make sense. I watched my checking account stabilize the way a heartbeat steadies. After a long sprint, I started buying the good coffee. I put a plant on the windowsill and dared it to live. And then, like the calendar had been holding its breath, Mia turned 18. She did it the day after her birthday, before they'd finished the leftover cake. 2 duffel bags, the little savings she'd hidden in a tampon box behind the bathroom pipes, her birth certificate folded into a Ziploc. She texted me from the curb, "Leaving now." I was already on I-5, half crying, half laughing, my hands tight on the wheel. She moved into a dorm that smelled like old carpet and new chances. I bought her a second-hand laptop and a comforter she picked because it looked like sunrise. We sat on the floor between boxes and ate takeout with plastic forks, and when I hugged her, she laughed into my shoulder, the way she did when she was 5, and the world was simple. "You're free," I said. I meant it like a blessing. I meant it like a promise to the little girl who used to slip notes under my door that said, "Are you okay, Robert and Susan didn't fall?" They slid. It's slower that way, which feels fairer. They kept the house through spring by pretending the mail wasn't real, by choosing the envelopes that didn't make their stomachs hurt. When the bank finally stopped being polite, there were signs on the lawn, and strangers walking through rooms I had vacuumed 1,000 times. They lasted 3 months in a cousin's rental, and 4 in a half-basement that smelled like wet concrete. Mia sent me one picture from far away peeling paint a mattress on the floor, a dish rack with 2 chipped plates. She captioned it, "They said you were the reason for everything. Then they realized you were the reason anything worked at all." They tried to contact me around then. A Facebook message from an account with no photo, "Can we talk?" An envelope with no return address that felt heavy with apology and light with responsibility. A text from an unknown number that began with, "We're family," and ended with, "You owe us." I let them float away unopened, unsaved, unanswered. There is a difference between silence and surrender. Mine was a choice. Sometimes, when the city was loud and my apartment small, I thought about the lawsuit that backfired and wondered if that was the last story they'd tell about me in rooms I would never enter. She ruined us. I imagined the pause after the soft correction that came, whether they said it out loud or not. We were already ruined. She stopped paying the bill for the ruin. Mia came up on weekends. We learned the shape of a family that doesn't hurt. We bought groceries we liked and didn't justify them to anyone. On Sundays, we walked dogs at a shelter and gave them names that sounded like second chances. She studied. I worked. We stacked small, decent days like bricks and watched a life appear where there hadn't been one. It is astonishing how quickly you relearn the ordinary when no one is taking it from you. The first Christmas, after everything, I left the lights in their box. No tree, no garland. I made cocoa on the stove and left the TV off. The evening held still around me like a lake at midnight. Across the alley, someone's window glowed warm, and voices rose and fell in the shape of a family I didn't want anymore. I thought about a fork set down, about a line spoken like a toast. "The only gift I want is for you to get out of this house." I let the words pass through me and kept what was valuable, not the cruelty, not the dismissal, only the proof. Leaving had always been my gift. I just hadn't wrapped it yet. The second Christmas, Mia came up with a suitcase and a grin and a bag of cheap tinsel. We hung exactly 1 strand over the curtain rod. "Minimalist," she declared. We cooked badly and laughed hard. At midnight, we stood at the window and watched a scatter of fireworks break against the low clouds. The heater clicked on Faithful and Affordable. She glanced at me, a question. "They're the oldest kind. Are we okay now?" I nodded. We were more than okay. We were unclaimed. I still pass through Portland sometimes. I don't drive past the old house. It doesn't belong to them, and it never belonged to me in the way I wanted. It belongs to the winter that finished, to the year the lights went out and showed me the shape of every exit. I park in front of a coffee shop that didn't used to be there and order the good roast, no apology. If I think of Robert, I hope he found something quiet inside himself and learned to listen to it. If I think of Susan, I hope she learned the difference between love and need. Hope is free, and it costs me nothing to spend it. People like to ask about regret, like it's a test you either pass or fail. Do I regret calling the police? No. Do I regret canceling the bills? No. Do I regret leaving? I regret not leaving sooner. There's a different kind of grief that comes when you realize you were the grown-up all along, and no one is coming to rescue you. It's heavy for a while. Then it becomes a tool you carry, the kind that opens locks. On the anniversary, I don't celebrate, I take the long way home. The city is rain clean and blinking. I stop by the market and buy oranges and cinnamon sticks and a cheap candle that smells like something sweet from a life I never lived. In my kitchen, I set the candle on the counter and light it. The flame stands up sure of itself. Mia texts a photo from her campus window, snow dusting the quad, a line of footprints that look like punctuation. 2 finals left. Then I'm yours for Coco, she writes. I send back a picture of the candle and the single strand of tinsel we saved in a drawer. I'll be here. Heat's on. Lights too. I stand at the window while water begins to simmer, and for a moment I can hear the distant echo of cutlery and the old voice that tried to make me small. The echo passes. The kettle sings. I turn off the stove, pour the water, and watch steam rise like a promise kept. The truth is simple and doesn't need to be shouted. I was never the gift they wanted. I was the one I finally chose. And this year, every year, the only thing I want for Christmas is exactly what I already have: a door that locks from the inside, a room warmed by my own hands, and a silence that belongs to me. If this story stayed with you, give it a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. Your support helps these voices be heard.